Imagine a queen's corpse, dead for centuries, lying in a broken coffin for all to see, and being kissed on the lips by her own descendant. It sounds like a horror story, but this is the true fate of Catherine of Valois, a medieval queen of England. In 1669, the famous diarist Samuel Pepys actually held the mummified body of this long-dead queen in his arms and did kiss her mouth, bragging that he had kissed a queen on his 36th birthday. How on earth did the remains of a royal end up as a morbid tourist attraction, accessible to be touched and even smooched by the living? Today, we're uncovering the bizarre afterlife of Catherine of Valois, a tale of love, death, desecration, and ultimate redemption that will leave you speechless and maybe a bit amazed at how strange history can be. Welcome to a tale where history meets the macabre. Catherine of Valois, 1401 to 1437, was no ordinary medieval figure. She was the daughter of a French king, the wife of England's legendary King Henry V, the mother of King Henry VI, and the grandmother of King Henry VII. In life, her role helped shape the royal lines of England and France. But it's what happened after her death that truly sets her story apart. Why is this important to you? Because it reveals a hidden side of history, a reminder that even a celebrated queen's legacy can take a shocking turn. This story shows how truth is stranger than fiction, and it gives us a fresh perspective on how the mighty are remembered or misremembered over time. So if you love mysterious and dramatic stories from the past, keep watching. Catherine's tale will captivate your curiosity and make you appreciate how far respect for the dead has come. Ready for a journey back in time? Let's dive in. Catherine was born a French princess, the daughter of King Charles VI of France. She became a key pawn in the power games of medieval Europe. In 1420, during the 100 Years' War, Catherine was married off to King Henry V of England as part of a peace treaty between their countries. Henry V was the heroic victor of Agincourt, and Catherine, by all accounts, was a charming and attractive young woman. The marriage was meant to unite England and France, and for a brief moment it did. Catherine was crowned Queen of England in 1421, and later that year she gave birth to a son, the future Henry VI. It seemed like the beginning of a fairy tale legacy, a French princess turned beloved English queen, mother to a king. But fate had other plans. Henry V died suddenly in 1422, never even seeing his infant son. At just 21, Catherine was a widow and queen dowager. Her fairy tale turned into a fight for survival at the English court. Yet Catherine's story was far from over. Young and still influential, she soon found love in an unexpected place. Who could imagine a dowager queen marrying a commoner in secret? That's exactly what Catherine did. She entered into a clandestine romance with a Welsh courtier, Owen Tudor. Owen was a mere servant in her household, a far cry from a king, but their attraction defied the strict rules set by her late husband's family. The English council had even passed a law threatening to seize the property of any man who married the widowed queen without permission. Despite the risks, Catherine and Owen Tudor likely married in secret and had several children together. This unlikely love story founded an entirely new royal dynasty. One of their sons, Edmund Tudor, would become the father of King Henry XIII. In other words, Catherine's forbidden marriage made her the grandmother of the Tudor dynasty's first king, a stunning twist of fate for a woman who had once been a pawn in Franco-English politics. Catherine's blood now flowed in the veins of future monarchs. Every life, even one as dramatic as Catherine's, must come to an end. Catherine died on 3 January 1437, likely in childbirth or shortly after, at only 35 years old. Despite any scandal around her second marriage, she was given a solemn, respectful royal funeral. Picture the scene. On February 10th, 1437, mourners gathered at Westminster Abbey. A painted wooden effigy of Catherine, robed in satin, fur, and a crown, lay atop her coffin as it was carried in procession. 59 rich cloths of gold were offered during the Mass, the kind of magnificent send-off befitting a queen. Catherine's young son, King Henry VI, and the nobility of England attended to pay their respects. She was laid to rest in the Old Lady Chapel of Westminster Abbey. However, notably, she was not buried beside her famous husband, Henry V, possibly because she had remarried a commoner after Henry's death. Still, at that moment, Catherine's resting place was hallowed ground, and one would have expected her remains to slumber undisturbed for eternity beneath the Abbey's sacred stones. Little did anyone know that Catherine's story was about to take a bizarre turn. For about 65 years, her tomb lay untouched. But then a new king, her own descendant, came along with big plans that would upend Catherine's peaceful rest. The stage is set for a royal mix of negligence and the macabre. What could possibly go wrong with a queen's coffin in one of the holiest places in England? As it turns out, a lot. Fast forward to the early 1500s. King Henry VII, the very grandson Catherine gained through her marriage to Owen Tudor, had taken the throne. After winning the Wars of the Roses, Henry VII was eager to solidify his legacies and honor his royal lineage. One way to do that was by upgrading the family's burial sites. He decided to demolish the Old Lady Chapel at Westminster Abbey to build a grand new chapel for himself and his descendants. In this ambitious renovation, the coffin of Catherine of Valois was unearthed and moved aside. Henry VII certainly knew Catherine was his own grandmother, and he intended to re-enter her properly in the new chapel eventually. But as often happens, politics and other urgencies got in the way. Henry was busy dealing with wars, securing his dynasty, and the death of his heir Arthur, among other things. The sad result? Catherine's reburial never happened. Her remains were essentially put into storage and forgotten. In fact, some historians believe Henry VII had a darker motive for how he handled Catherine's remains. Catherine's marriage to Owen Tudor had been a bit scandalous. Remember, it skirted the law. Henry VII's own claim to the throne partly rested on that illegitimate lineage, something he might have been sensitive about. It suggested that Henry deliberately destroyed Catherine's original alabaster tomb memorial during the Abbey renovations to distance himself from this awkward ancestry. If true, that means the new king literally tore down his grandmother's monument. And in the process of reconstruction, her coffin was disturbed. The lid accidentally cracked open, revealing the corpse inside. Whatever the intent, the effect was shocking. Catherine's body was left exposed to the open air. So what happened to Catherine's corpse next? Henry VII's workers apparently plonked her coffin near the tomb of her first husband, Henry V. According to accounts, it was a shabby, battered wooden coffin, and half of its lid had disintegrated with age, leaving the upper part of Catherine's body visible to anyone who peered inside. Rather than being securely buried, the Queen's remains were now effectively above ground, within the railings of Henry V's elaborate chantry tomb. It's as if a priceless relic was left on a shelf, forgotten and gathering dust. The most unsettling part? There she remained in this state for nearly 300 years. Yes, you heard that right. For 3 centuries, the corpse of a Queen of England lay in a loose coffin, neglected and on display in Westminster Abbey. Imagine strolling through a church and coming face to face with the decayed remains of a long-dead queen. For generations of Londoners and visitors, this was a reality. Catherine's body, dried and mummified by time, could be seen through the broken coffin, a gruesome curiosity in the heart of a royal abbey. Strangely, people of the time didn't find it as outrageous as we might today. In fact, it became almost a tourist attraction. Through the iron grille of Henry V's tomb, onlookers could squint and glimpse the uncanny sight of Catherine's corpse. It was not considered in the least odd by later generations that an ancient queen's remains were treated like an old relic tossed aside. Over the centuries, monarchs came and went: Henry VIII, Edward VI, Mary I, Elizabeth I, James I, and Charles I. Yet not one of them did anything to give their royal ancestor a proper burial. Why did they ignore her? Perhaps because Catherine was a Lancastrian figure, or simply out of sight, out of mind. Whatever the reason, her neglect was complete. Chroniclers like Holinshed and Stowe mentioned the poor queen's corpse in passing, as if she were just another sight in the abbey. Even William Shakespeare touched on Catherine's legacy, though in his play Henry V, he only playfully mocks her French accent, not knowing the indignities her body was suffering in the abbey at that very time. As the years turned to decades and then centuries, Catherine's strange afterlife only got stranger. People grew bolder in interacting with her remains. How far would curiosity go? The answer: pretty far. By the 17th century, visitors could apparently get up close with the exposed royal corpse, and one man in particular would make history for his morbid encounter. The most infamous moment in Catherine's post-mortem saga came on Shrove Tuesday in February 1669. Samuel Pepys, a well-known diarist and official, visited Westminster Abbey that day with his wife and some friends. Pepys was celebrating his birthday in a most peculiar way by seeking out the remains of Queen Catherine. Through a special favor of the Abbey staff, Pepys was shown the body of Catherine of Valois. What he did next is jaw-dropping. Pepys lifted up the upper half of the Queen's corpse in his own hands and kissed her on the mouth. Yes, you read that correctly. In his diary, Pepys recorded the event with macabre glee, writing, "I had the upper part of her body in my hands, and I did kiss her mouth, reflecting upon it that I did kiss a queen." He even noted the personal significance. It was his birthday, turning 36, and he boasted that his first kiss of the day was a kiss from a queen, albeit a long-deceased one. This grisly birthday adventure might make our skin crawl today, but Pepys seemed thrilled by it. He treated it like a quirky achievement unlocked, as if kissing a royal mummy was something to brag about at the office the next day. The fact that an English commoner, even a prominent one, could handle and kiss the corpse of a medieval queen in a church speaks volumes about how desecrated Catherine's remains had become. What should have been a sacred memorial was now practically a sideshow exhibit. And believe it or not, it gets even worse. In the following century, her corpse suffered further indignities at the hands of curiosity seekers and vandals. Westminster Abbey wasn't just a tourist spot, it was also connected to Westminster School. There are accounts that schoolboys gained access to Catherine's remains and badly mauled her body. We can only imagine the foolish bravado that led these youths to manhandle the bones of a queen, possibly snatching grim souvenirs or simply indulging in ghoulish pranks. By the time the 1700s rolled around, Catherine's corpse was in a sorry state. It had been exposed, kissed, and literally picked apart over the years. Finally, the authorities decided enough was enough. In 1778, nearly 3 centuries after Catherine's initial burial, what was left of her remains was removed from public view. The Dean of Westminster, horrified by the spectacle, ordered that she be placed in a sealed vault, specifically the vault of the Dukes of Northumberland, for safety. Catherine was no longer a public curiosity, but at this point her once beautiful body was just a collection of decayed and damaged bones. In fact, when later experts examined the remains, they found a sorry jumble of bones, with many pieces missing or broken. A heartbreaking outcome for a former queen. There is a bittersweet ending to this saga. Catherine's bones rested in that vault for another century, out of sight at last. Then, in the Victorian era, people began to show a new respect for historical figures and relics. Queen Victoria, in particular, was keen on honoring the past. In 1877, a renowned architect, Sir George Gilbert Scott, noticed the sad state of Catherine's makeshift burial and recommended that she be properly interred next to her illustrious husband, Henry VII. The authorities agreed. Thus, in 1878, 440 years after Catherine's death, her remains were exhumed one more time and finally given a proper burial in Westminster Abbey's Henry V of Chantry Chapel. A special space was designed for her near Henry V's tomb, effectively reuniting them in death. The reinterment was done with solemn respect. Dean Stanley of Westminster supervised the ceremony, and a Latin inscription was carved to mark the spot. The translated inscription poignantly records how Catherine's bones, long cast down and broken after various vicissitudes, were finally deposited here by command of Queen Victoria. It lists her titles and family: daughter of the King of France, wife of Henry V, mother of Henry VI, grandmother of Henry VII, ensuring that posterity would remember exactly who she was. One can almost hear a sigh of relief from Catherine's ghost. After centuries of indignity, the Queen was at last allowed to rest in peace, entombed with honor beside the king she had loved in life. Catherine of Valois' story is a dramatic reminder that death isn't always the end of the story. This queen's legacy was not only in the kings and dynasties descended from her, but also in the eerie tale of what became of her mortal remains. From a grand royal funeral to centuries as a neglected mummy, from being part of a majestic abbey to being literally manhandled by passers-by, her post-mortem saga makes us rethink how we honor history. The key takeaway? Even the mightiest can be forgotten or mistreated, and the line between veneration and desecration is alarmingly thin. It took over 400 years, but eventually respect for Catherine was restored, a satisfying close to a truly unsettling chapter of history. If this astonishing journey through time gave you goosebumps or taught you something new, then don't forget to hit that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments. Had you ever heard of a story crazier than this? And subscribe to the channel for more intriguing tales from our history's vault. Thank you for watching till the end. Remember to join us next time for another mind-blowing historical adventure. Subscribe and stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next.